Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Comic Book Chronicles. I am your host, Roddykat, and you can find me at Roddykat on Twitter. You can also find me at News Nerds Need on Twitter. You can also find me at CBCaps on Instagram. And of course, that sound effect you hear comes from none other than our man in Brooklyn. No sleep till Brooklyn. Brooklyn's in the house. Never take your shorts because Brooklyn's the borough. All of that. One agent underscore 70.
What's up, everybody?
Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at? Where Brooklyn at?
Just
I need to bring that. Need to bring that sound.
I gotta
Say what?
No, I gotta say that every time I hear the applause, this is we were just talking about what's missing from watching live sports nowadays because there's no crowd. Hearing our crowd noise piped in still gets me hyped, still gets me pumped, still gives me that like little surge at the start of the show to get things moving. So
Indeed.
I definitely appreciate that. It's funny that we were literally just talking about what's different about watching sports in the COVID era. And, even though they are piping in sound the same way we are, it's not the same, but at the same time, it does help.
That's true. So yeah, so basically, I'm not to speak for him, but yeah, we got these sounds because we like to make ourselves feel better. But no, it's like, just little touches here and there. It's all good. But to keep going on with the show intro, well, you can find this here podcast on the Coastal of the Podcast Network, CSPN.us.
Do it today.
Word. You can also find us on your podcast perusal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, aka Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the Cold Slither Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. You can also find us recording on both the Click Nation's YouTube channel and now on Twitch, twitch.tv/Comic Book Chronicles. And if you are watching us right now from over there, hey, how you doing?
What's up, Twitch?
Indeed. In fact, I need to doubly make sure that it's going on over there. It's going over there, and it is. So, excellent. So yeah, sorry, I'm kind of juggling some plates here while I'm doing this intro. But in the meantime, we are going to get into the clicks of nope, that's way too early for that. We're going to get into the books of the week. Clicks of the week comes later, folks. And we're going to start off with Ten of Swords Creation #1.
Yeah, this is the big kickoff to the Ten of Swords crossover. We have had essentially two prelude issues to this that set up how we are essentially having the X characters on Krakoa transport themselves to Otherworld, and that was essentially the crux of those two prelude stories. But now we have the proper beginning of this crossover or X-Men event. Everything okay, Ronnie?
There you go. Yeah. I'm just doing some checks. But yeah,
No.
but so when I first read this, I was like, let me not say anything before we get to this, because as you just said, that there was a couple of setup issues, and there was also things that were going on in like specifically Excalibur,
Right.
that led up to this, and I mean other books also, because Cable a little bit and X-Men proper. And, the other books, some of the stuff has been weaving through. But definitely part of this story is hooked into the parts that is coming out of Excalibur. And I was like, well, wait a minute. Something feels like it's missing here, until I got to a certain point. I was like, nope, no, we're good. Everything is... no, everything falls in line with...
I'll ring the spoiler bell so we can talk about what's missing because I wanted to mention a few things that that I observed reading this issue. So I'm going to ring the spoiler bell.
All right.
So anyone who still has not yet read Ten of Swords Creation #1, please fast forward a bit in 3, 2, 1. Right. So my first observation, I don't know if this plays into what you were about to say, but I noted that if you thought Ten of Swords was going to play out like a big AD&D campaign, you were right. This is Hickman and Tinny Howard co-writing this issue, and it shows.
Right. I actually didn't think about that part about it, but I could see where. Yeah, I could actually see where that comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, our opening scene is literally, seems like it's almost pulled from the Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers. This is, we're almost, we're essentially at the Battle of Helm's Deep.
Yeah. Okay. Now that part, yeah, you're right about that part, and I think I did because I think I did notice that part because we're like, okay, yeah, they're really just kind of getting in here.
I mean, I'm looking at this like, wow, that really bears a striking resemblance to the events of Helm's Deep. So the Battle of Helm's Deep. So, it was, it was pretty striking. I wanted to really mention, just in some, that this issue, more so than the prelude issues that we were just referencing, which, as I said, serve to tell us how we're going to get from point A, Krakoa, to point B, which is Otherworld and and the Starlight Citadel and whatnot. That was the point of the two prelude issues. But now we have in this issue, and I'm reminded of this particular term, and what I'm referring to is lore. And that's and this is what happens when I get together with extended family and friends who are big role players. They still do role playing now and then, and they were part of a big AD&D crew that I rolled with here and there back in the day. So they brought up the word lore over the weekend, and I was like, oh, we're actually getting this past weekend, that is. And I was like, oh, we're actually getting a big lore dump in this book.
Yeah.
It's a gigantic dump of info that helps to set up why we should care about Apocalypse's long history, which sets up this entire story.
Mm-hmm.
He's the crux of this story. I mean, his history is the crux of this story. So
Right.
that is essentially the important aspects that you should take from this book, which is this particular issue, which is it sets up the conflict, and it really does dump a lot of lore on us so that we have an understanding of why we should care.
Right. And especially with that, because like, even prior to this, with even before the actual setup to Ten of Swords, um, everything that has pretty much been going on with Apocalypse since I would pretty much say Hoxpox actually since Hoxpox, like everything you knew he was kind of going into something, he was plotting something, he was into something, the stuff with Excalibur kind of bore all of that out, went since it started, but you knew there was some things that were going on with him and that was leading up to something, and this is seemingly the culmination of that, or at least going to be the culmination of that.
Definitely.
With especially what ends up happening in this story, and it's also kind of weird because like there are some people, I mean some of the people that pretty much get involved in this story. I kind of want to just skip ahead to something that is actually appealing to me about this, or at least what it's seeming to be, but I'm gonna actually hold off on it because I have it in my notes. But not everybody's involved, but at least a couple of people are involved. It's like you wouldn't think that they wouldn't want to be around this, and they kind of haven't really been. But some of the people that kind of are in here make some sense. You know, specifically like the Archangels. You know,
Oh,
because his reasoning was like seemingly a little weird, but it actually still makes sense.
no, it definitely makes sense. I mean, given that the dynamic on Krakoa between uh, our quote unquote heroes and the ex villains who are being accepted as citizens of Krakoa, essentially they're kind of probationary citizens, obviously, because they're much more like Sabretooth. They're much more likely to be like put into into the Sharkticon pit. Shout out to the Sharkticon pit.
Indeed.
And the Cold Slither, the original Cold Slither podcast. But that's essentially what happens to the bad guys. So all of the X-Men baddies, and this obviously plays into several ongoing stories right now that that are kind of on pause because of Ten of Swords. But the villains are always kind of their nature sometimes doesn't change despite the fact that they're on Krakoa.
Right.
So despite the fact that they may have been resurrected, their nature doesn't essentially change, or at least they haven't found reform just yet. We'll put it that way. So, because of that, we always had a deep-seated suspicion of Apocalypse's motives and actions when we found out he was going to be a major player in the pages of Excalibur. And as you said, now we're starting to see that come to fruition. And as I said earlier, Tinny Howard looks to be a prime architect of this story, or at least a big contributor to it.
Right, because Hickman looks like he's doing the overall, plot and planning of the whole thing, and the people he has right with him. Well, I'm not sure. Like we never. It's hard to say sometimes, especially when in co-written books, who's doing exactly what writing. Unless their style just is glaring. But even then, it's kind of hard to say if that's the case. So we don't necessarily is who's actually doing what, and it kind of doesn't really matter at certain points. Like there's probably certain points where this person's on one side because the stuff that kind of deals with that specifically with Saturnin, and I'm assuming that's how she pronounces her name because I've never known that, and I have known the character since the original Excalibur. But I've never known how her name is supposed to be pronounced. So that stuff is you can pretty much say is hers. Or you can assume anyway. I don't know. Maybe Hickman took a swipe at it.
Right. Well, and in any event, it's definitely interesting to see, as you mentioned earlier, some of the characters who jump on board the train here to join the quest, to join the campaign. There is a betrayal. Obviously, it's not the worst thing. Like we kind of suspected this character didn't have the best motives a couple issues ago in X-Men. So, because he's kind of creepy.
Right.
So it's no big surprise there.
And as I say in my notes, curse your sudden but inevitable betrayal.
Exactly.
Shout out to the Firefly folks.
I got a kick out of seeing Havoc cut loose, but not be a psychopath or a sociopath or a damaged individual the way he is in Hellions.
Right.
Kind of sucks that that Banshee doesn't quite get got, but something happens to him. I'm still waiting for a Marvel Legends Banshee so that I can put together a all new X-Men Marvel Legends lineup. From Hasbro. I don't want to have to dig for the Toy Biz Banshee. So
right. So let's actually get into the meat of it on that. And as I said, my notes it's always Banshee, which is it's kind of because you knew as soon as we saw him going off in, I believe it was either X-Men or Excalibur, whichever one of the books that was. When you saw him, Summoner, and Eunice, thank you. Go off through the gate. You knew something was going to go on, and this is where that kind of bears out. So.
I was about to say, without spoiling the whole thing. That's what I was trying to do. I was kind of dancing around the fact that they're that they're on a quest. I mean, we could go into what the quest ends up being.
Well, I mean, you're gonna end up having to spoil just a little bit of it because of what happened. Like, we don't necessarily have to go into what happened to like everybody, but let's just say it this way: the rock slide stuff kind of comes to bear, like we talked about, because like we knew something was gonna happen with that, and something very, very much did, and because like I said, they took the time to kind of to kind of make a point of that. So.
Right.
Whether that's the end of it, which I don't know, may not be the case given some articles that are out right now, but regardless. So yeah, so there's a so yeah, like I said, Summoner, Eunice, and Banshee end up going through the Eternal Gate, which has been set up in Excalibur. A couple of them end up coming back. One of them gets captured, and this whole story starts about, hey, this is what's going on, and the Quiet Council comes in, you know, and Apocalypse kind of lets them know what's going on, and they have a powwow, and Krakoa gets involved because Krakoa's like no with a certain thing, or with because they want to close the gates that gate, but Krakoa's like nah. And then they get into then, you know, in other places they get into a little investigation mode because, you know, like Agent 70 said, Banshee, you know, has been taken out but not completely out, or taken down but not completely out. So there's a little background and investigation by the Summers kids on that, which digs up as the story goes on and some things going on in Overworld. You know, some things kind of come out on that point, but by the time that stuff comes out, the stuff that happens in Overworld end up getting heated up. But now this is where I can kind of go into, without spoiling too much, and say that the issue from here starts to turn into Contest of Champions Mutant Edition, and I'm gonna love it if that ends up being what it is, because a thing gets set up between a competition of sorts kind of gets set up, or more like a deal. I don't know. It feels like a competition, but someone would say it's a duel that happens it's going to happen in 3 days, and due to partially the machinations of Saturn and you know, outside of that betrayal that we ended up seeing from some folks that we end up find out that are really close to Apocalypse outside of Summoner, then a thing gets set up, and the whole swords part of the 10 of Swords kind of comes into play with that. But yeah, it seems to be ending up looking like another Contest of Champions, and I'm kind of curious as to if that's going to be the case or not. So I don't know if you saw that part about it.
Well, I would say that you're skipping over the campaign part of the AD&D, the AD&D campaign side, because essentially we're going on a quest to find all these swords that are the source of the title, you know,
Sure.
10 of Swords. We're looking for 10 swords, some that they seem to have in their possession, some that they're going to have to look for.
Right.
And, you know, we've seen some of the promotional art that involves various swords from around the Marvel Universe, some of them not being, you know, some of the major swords, obviously, that are with their current wielders, like the Ebony Blade, aren't involved, but some of the other ones that are kind of in limbo are, or at least aren't like currently possessed by certain characters, are ones that are becoming involved.
And apparently one is a person.
Right. So at the end of the day, what we have is this quest that they've put in, because they have 3 days to essentially come up with these swords so that they can go into battle against the forces of Apocalypse's children. I don't know if they're technically the forces of Araco. They might be, but at the end, but ultimately, what we have here is this is the quest part. They have to go look for these swords.
Sure.
So, Once they go get these swords, that's when they can engage in battle to try to protect Krakoa from these people who can apparently go right through this gate between Otherworld and Krakoa. It's the gate that Krakoa refuses to take down. That would be the easy way of solving this particular problem. But as Roddykat mentioned, Krakoa seems to have a certain way about this, or is at least thinking a certain way about this gate and wants to keep it. So,
Right. Which it makes sense for Krakoa because one thing to point up is that and this is a point that will definitely play into it. So Krakoa was once one land. Part of that land has come back and been joined, and that's where the gate is. The other part of that, which Apocalypse Kids have been fighting over, especially if you look at the episode, look at the map that is in the issue. Basically, Krakoa is on one side, the gate, and then Overworld, and then on the other side of it is the other part of Araco. That used to be a part of Krakoa. So basically, they set it up as like one's on one side, one's on the other, and then the middle ground is Overworld, and that's where a lot of this takes place. Possibly the battleground coming into this.
So they do provide as Hickman X books tend to do. They have maps and data pages. So we do have a map of Otherworld and how it layers above, and the kingdoms involved. So there's kingdoms here that we're definitely not familiar with. We definitely know of a couple of the locations, unless people who are fans of Excalibur might be more familiar with this, or some of this stuff may have been created for the story.
I think so, because I don't recall half of those, but at the same time, that could be something I don't remember.
So in any event, I know that Roddykat was holding off on mentioning something that I guess he's a fan of that happens at the end of this book. At the end, there is a setup for the next X title to spin out of the story, and it was actually announced this week before. It was set up before this. It was set up actually at the end of Empire.
Yes.
And the official announcement of this new ongoing, or at least this new story or this new book, came out this week just before Ten of Swords dropped in stores on Wednesday. So you can take that away.
Yeah, so totally. So going back to Empire, at the end of it, we saw the stuff. We talked about this before, so we don't necessarily have to go too far in it. But the stuff that happened at the end of Empire with Abigail Brand and her quitting her position where it was, and then coming back later on in the story saying, with sometime in the future saying that, hey, I got this other thing going on. That stuff part is still out and about, but as we see from Ten of Swords creation, I don't know if this was actually a shield kind of offset thing, but it's basically we see the rebirth of the Peak, which was the platform, space center, whatever, watchtower, whichever you want to call it, of S.W.O.R.D, which is pretty much the, pretty much what Captain Marvel was ahead of, and Abigail Brand was second in command of. That dealt with pretty much, extraterrestrial, things, as far as prevention, not prevention, but first contact and prevention, and anything that's coming towards Earth, and that may or may not be an issue. So apparently the Peak is back into play because for somehow Cyclops, and maybe there's a story here I'm missing. Saturn pretty much planted in Rachel and Cable's head about this one thing that comes up. They took it to Scott. Scott knew exactly what this thing was, and it ends up coming to play that the sword that Cable has coincidentally can repower the Peak, and they went and did that. When I'm sitting here like, how does Scott even know this information? because I'm like, unless this come out someplace that I don't even know, you know, like what even happened to the peak in the first place, to where it was it went dormant or went non-used, whatever the case may be. But
Right. I don't know if I know when the peak decided to go quiet. Um, it must have been before Empire because
right, or whatever happened was, because I assumed it had been destroyed because of what happened prior to Empire. Because remember when whatever event that was, and the Earth had a barrier around it, and
Right.
and like things was trying to, you know, people were trying to get into, but they couldn't because they were out in space, and people couldn't get out of it because of the thing. But I'd assume it had gotten destroyed around that time. I'm sure there's somebody out here who knows all of that and will, excuse me, will enlighten us on it. But I'd assume it had been destroyed during that whole thing.
Right. If we had had the opportunity to sit down and really do research, we could have figured this out.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Like I'm
on the
sure.
Google, but you know what I was going to just add very quickly is, um, what we have now is this primer for a new title that literally was announced this week. So I could see, oh look, it's literally happening before our eyes.
Right. Which I gotta admit, going into the end of this issue, before we go on to something else.
Oh, now I remember. I'm sorry. The where Cyclops would have recognized this. This would have come from Astonishing X-Men, the Whedon run.
Oh, okay. Wow, that far back. Okay.
You know what I mean? That's where they introduced that's where they introduced S.W.O.R.D.
Well, no, I yeah, that part, but I meant like when it went quiet.
Oh no, but I'm talking about how he would recognize.
Sure. Okay.
That's when you mentioned that, I was like, oh, I remember reading this, like, oh, that's how he recognizes it.
Gotcha. Okay.
He probably ran into it during that Whedon Cassidy Astonishing X-Men run from way back.
Sure. Which at this point is a deep cut, but yeah. Okay.
Well, yeah. Now that we're talking about S.W.O.R.D, yeah, it has to be a S.W.O.R.D deep cut.
Right. But like get back to my point on that. I was like, I guess I don't know why I didn't expect that to come out of, because I wasn't thinking anything about that sword in this thing, because it was like the whole thing is called 10 of Swords. So the last thing I don't know why I wasn't thinking about, I don't know if you even thought about it yourself, but the last thing I was thinking of was one, the peak and sword coming back into play because of this. But you know, once you say it, it kind of makes total sense.
Right.
So I was like, okay, yeah, of course, sword, but regardless, so that thing going into this was like, okay, and then it kind of put back into place the stuff that was from, you know, starts to put back into place the announcement, and two, the stuff that kind of came out of the end of Empire for me. So I was like, okay, let's go, let's see what's going on with this with this little event that's going on right now that seemed to hit the ground running. So that's one thing we can definitely say about this issue. I don't know if you got any last thoughts on this one, but I would definitely say check this out if you've been into the X books, you know, coming from the Dawn of X stuff, Hoxpox, all that kind of good mess.
Right. This is their first big crossover, so I'm willing to see if this pays off.
Yeah, I mean, and if history is any indication, and you know, Hickman's dealings with it, and anybody else who's, you know, having anything to do with it, I suspect it should come out right. Hopefully not
Right.
wrong about that.
I would just give a shout out to Pepe Larraza, Marte Gracia, who can continue to provide, you know, the pencil, you know, the pencil art and the color art respectively, that makes Hickman's mumbo jumbo sing. Shout out to Tim Dog 98. Shout out to Tim for giving us that particular term that does come back because it is useful every now and again.
The difference is with it is now, like we've been getting it in, you know, either data dumps on the page or in doses. You know, we definitely got a good dose of it in Hoxpox, like coming out of it, even, you know, data pages and just in general in the throughout what was written. But coming out of like Dawn of X, it's been I don't want to say less so, but the drips have been kind of more in the data dump pages, which I have to think that Hickman kind of learned from his Avengers run and all the stuff he was going through there, where the term comes from. It was like, no, we can do this a little differently.
Right.
we can parse this out just a little differently than what we did there, instead of just putting it out all on the page. So, but yeah, that's S.W.O.R.D creation. It's safe to say there was also a mention of Zorn, and I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Now that I think about it, because I'm looking at my notes and I was like, the whole tarot card situation, which has come up a couple of different times. I don't know if that's actually going to come into anything, or that's just a framing device. But that kind of comes up a couple of times in the beginning of this issue, and I'm like, okay, I'm assuming that's going to be something. And even there's some a couple of people when those tarot cards, or at least one particular person or two, like we see like Apocalypse on some of those cards and whatnot, but there's somebody on one of those cards that calls up that I don't think we've seen. So I suspect all of that's going to come out during this event.
Right. Before we wrap our discussion on this book, I just wanted to mention that we apparently are introduced in this issue to the original four horsemen of the apocalypse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah, and yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I had that in my notes as well. Which apparently are Apocalypse's kids. Like actual, we're assuming, actual, blood relative kids, which makes a whole lot of sense. I'm kind of curious as to, Archangel's, granted, he don't care for Apocalypse that much, but I suspect there's going to be some interactions with them and him specifically that's going to possibly be amusing.
He's not the only former horseman of
True.
horseman on the X-Men roster, so
True.
if I'm not mistaken, Wolverine has been, as well as a couple of other characters. So,
which Wolverine definitely will be playing a part of this, as we've seen in past images of coming into this. So yeah, I would suspect everybody who's going to hold a sword has had some dealing, not necessarily as a horseman, but had some significant role.
Right. Yeah, in the promo art, yes.
So,
all right.
Well, so stay tuned for that. Next up, you want to pick one?
Sure. I'm going to actually, I think you read this. It was actually one of the more curious books out this week, and that is Juggernaut #1.
I did read that, yes.
It's kind of curious because Marvel's timeline is a little skewed. And this really kind of hindered my enjoyment of this issue, which was actually, pretty, it moved along at a nice pace. It had some nice dialogue. It's written by Fabian Nicieza and drawn by Ron Garney.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very different Ron Garney style. It's the newer style that he's been refining over the last several books that he's worked on, including Daredevil. So essentially we have a Juggernaut who starts this book working for Roddykat's favorite Marvel Universe company, Damage Control, and he's doing some urban renewal, and as a result of superhero shenanigans, and it actually literally seems to be in the wake of War of the Realms, according to the references that some of the characters make from Damage Control.
Well, maybe not, because they do mention alien invasion, so one can assume that's the Kotati stuff. Because there is a mention of alien invasions in that. So it may, because I thought about that as well. I was like, yeah, I'm not entirely sure of the time frame, but I would assume
Oh
that
no,
it was
no,
kind of
but they mentioned that no residual traces of energy from the 9 realms. That's the
right.
first
And
page.
yeah, I recognize that. Yes.
That's the first page. So that's my guess is that it's in the wake of, and obviously this is one of those books that got the push because of COVID. Let's keep that in mind too,
Right.
right? So this should have been out probably springtime, maybe summertime. Not definitely not at the beginning of fall. So, given that this has a reference to War of the Realms, which ended at the end of 2019, beginning of 2020, it makes me question how does the Juggernaut's appearance with the Punisher and the Punisher kill crew happen in different armor? And that's another point that's made in this issue that
Right.
something that happened in the very forgettable Matthew Rosenberg X-Men, which I chose to forget. I definitely chose. I chose to forget. You know, I chose to forget a particular event that happened within Matthew Rosenberg's Uncanny X-Men because, in the wake of Hox Pox, all that stuff was thrown aside, basically.
Right. Or
At least
seemingly anyway.
Right, or at least in terms of who was dead. So because of that, I tend now to forget everything that happened during that run. But now, at least in this book, something happens in the penultimate issue of Rosenberg's run, and I had to, I didn't go into my collection to look it up because it is a while ago now. We're talking 2018 at this point now because this is pre-War of the Realms, long before War of the Realms.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so this, we're talking about, before Hoxpox. So that, we're talking a while ago. Something happens to the Juggernaut that seems to not have been in effect during the Punisher Kill Crew story, but now we're getting, a follow up on that issue, on that X-Men issue that Rosenberg wrote. So it's kind of weird. I'm a little confused as to the timing of it. I mean, the art doesn't seem to indicate that as much, but hey, and this is kind of a shots fired moment for me, because I did not choose to, because as I said, I did choose to forget what happened during that book. But hey, editors not doing their jobs is not a new thing. Shots fired. But I think they're gonna explain it maybe in the next issue or two. So, there is a little bit of benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, I'm confused. So, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean,
The rest, that was like my main takeaway from this. Like, wait a second.
yeah, I mean, I'm not as hung up on that part as you are, but those thoughts did kind of come to mind. But also, given the number of books, especially a couple, well, at least one or two, one this week, whose time frame is kind of questionable, even though it's supposed to be set up in the past. I don't know, and this is the thing that Marvel's been doing for for a while, past couple of years. Like, there's been some miniseries or whatnot that have been set up in a questionable time period that's either is supposed to happen or is happening at a certain particular time that's whose timeline is kind of questionable, and specifically what ends up coming out of it, if anything, that may be taken forward. Because I know there's one, I'm looking at you, Taro, that doesn't seem to have come up on anything, and I don't know if it was just like, here's just a story that's supposedly set in here that a thing happens, but but we don't know if there's anything coming out of that, because something like that coming out right, or even Antithesis, Fantastic Four to Antithesis from this week. Like I said, the timeline is kind of sort of questionable, especially with what happens in that book. That, well, it doesn't necessarily play out. It doesn't really have anything.
Yeah, I was about to say that's kind of like a weird example because that's supposed to be like kind of a retcon type story.
Right, and it's not finished because we're only 2 issues in, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But there's a character in there that is now supposedly, well, again, I'm sure that will be explained away at the end of it, because, like I said, there's a character in there that shows up that is technically no longer around thanks to recent Thor issues.
Mm-hmm.
But again, we'll get to that in actually another book in this week. So yeah, so Juggernaut, I'm getting to the crux of it. Yeah, so Juggernaut's working with damage control, doing some demolition. Come across some houses that people are squatting in. Some teens are squatting in specifically, and Juggernaut kind of goes and gets met with a force that he's that he thinks he knows before because it's his dealings with mutants and the various powers that he's had to go up against in the past. But we end up coming to find out that, or at least it is being said that he meets up with this teen who is a part of the crew who tries to stop him, thinking he's trying to encroach on the land, trying to kick him out of their land. And this particular teen's powers, who this teen keeps saying that she's not a mutant, so that part at some point is probably going to be explained. And this teen's name is kind of not good, but regardless, it seems could be a potentially interesting character.
They do make a joke about it.
Yeah, they do exactly. I was about how this character's name is sounds like a battery. Mm-hmm. And even before that, I was like, yeah, no, that's not a great name. But regardless, he ends up meeting this teen and interacting with them, and something happens that to this teen, and they end up talking because of what happens, and essentially leads Juggernaut into basically wanting to help the teen, which is you would think is something kind of unheard of for Kane Marco, because he's not trying to help anybody but himself, but but he goes to feel like he wants to help, and this teen just doesn't seem like wants to need help, but also the teen seemingly wants something from Juggernaut, in the form of, because their first interaction ended up going viral apparently, and now she kind of pops it in his head. It was like, hey, yeah, here's some stuff that if you want to help somebody, you want to help with this other thing, which happens to do with a fight that Juggernaut's possibly going to get into next issue, which rounds out this book. But yeah, this is a 5-issue miniseries. And like Angel 7 said, it was supposed to come out well before now, so we don't know what else this is going to be playing into, what is setting up for Juggernaut, or this new character who may or may not be a mutant.
Right.
At this point.
Right. It's vague at this point, but this character comes out and says no.
Right. So I'm thinking, if that's not the case, then is this person an Inhuman? Did this person? And I think this character did mention that there was actually kind of almost like a Spider-Man origin. It was like, no, it was some kind of accident, and an origin suit or something like that is what they said. So to make it sound like it was more of a Spider-Man type situation, and not them being a mutant. We'll see how that plays out in the coming issues, though. But it was a good read. Outside of that, the time frame aside and stuff, like I gotta look past that, and it seemed like it could be something. I don't know where it's going, or if it's even what it's going to do for Juggernaut, if anything. But it seems cool so far.
All right.
And that being the case, you want to do maybe one or two more, and then.
That's fine.
Hit the rapids.
I was about to say we could stay on the muscle bound train, because that's what seemed to be the theme of the books that came out this week, at least from Marvel.
I think we're on the same page with that. If you're going where I think you are.
I was about to say the choices between two books, and I wanted to talk about one in particular because we spoke about this just before starting the show, and I'm referring to Maestro number 2. Or Maestro number 2. Mm-hmm. This is actually one of my potential clicks of the week, because for anyone who is familiar with the Future Imperfect story that Peter David and George Perez did way back in the 90s, and for anyone familiar with that, there are several familiar beats that this story goes down, and this is supposed to be a prequel to that story. But we get a big curveball thrown at our expectations. So anyone familiar with the Future Imperfect story will recognize the setup but the surprise reveal will definitely still surprise. And I'm leaving it at that because I know Roddycat's going to go into more of the nitty gritty and also mention the fact that all of this is from his perspective of not having read the Future Imperfect story prior to this.
Right. So it's also worth noting that this seemingly sets up the basic. Well, this pretty much sets up, if I'm not mistaken, the Old Man Logan stuff as well.
It has a well, yeah, it has elements of it because that's with the Future Imperfect stuff doesn't make any reference obviously to the Old Man Logan stuff, but the Old Man Logan stuff came as um I believe the Old Man Logan stuff made some mention of the Wasteland stuff, but
Hmm.
doesn't have anything to do with the Imperfect stuff.
Right, which means that it's also, if that Hawkeye, the Old Man Hawkeye miniseries from last year, year before last, and also Avengers of the Wasteland, all of that stuff kind of comes like well after Future Imperfect and this stuff. So yeah, so get into it. So we find that of last issue, because we talked about last issue a couple of weeks ago. The Hulk basically was hitting away at an aim base with Modoc because the humans blew themselves up almost um, Planet of the Apes style, but not close enough to it, but not really.
Hmm.
We couldn't find out that this is after all of that, and there are still pockets of folks that are still around, and the Hulk kind of gets the nitty gritty on what's going on. But he, as of this issue, he kind of gets out into the world and see what the humans have all, what the humans have done, um, and he makes his way to DC and ends up finding a human or a pocket of humans led by Machine Man, seemingly, or at least Machine Man is above among them. And of course, being in DC, the state of the government was brought up, which in a way doesn't sound well. It does kind of sound like the way our government is right now. But basically, there's a pocket of humans and Machine Man underneath the White House that were, that had socked themselves away when everything went down. So the Hulk kind of comes across that and gets a little bit more background on stuff like that, and comes to find out the state of New York, uh, or at least what has become of New York anyway. And so Hulk makes his way over there, and in the midst of this, we come to find out that an old acquaintance of so here's where it gets weird. Also, an old acquaintance of Hulk's um, shows up, and they have a whole bunch of memorabilia, which I'm assuming this is also from the Future Imperfect stuff that Agent 7 is mentioning, because I feel like I've seen mention of this stuff before,
Yep.
or this person and the stuff before, who is alive and well and living in
Oh, not well, but definitely
well, yeah,
alive.
excuse me, but he's alive and around with his granddaughter, who has a backup story behind this. Um, but that part just kind of comes and goes. Hulk goes into New York to meet up with the Maestro, who apparently, knowing from this book, we know that he's going to eventually end up being.
Hmm.
Um, but he goes to meet this person who's kind of running New York. And at the end of this issue, when he gets to New York and sees what's going on, we find out that he's meeting up with one Hercules. Spoiler alert! At the end of this issue, because I don't know, maybe this was the case, and maybe I'll just kind of just kind of gloss over it. Like, I'm assuming that this other person, this other acquaintance, is the actual Maestro at the time, and is not Hercules, because that seems weird. Like, maybe you could put a little bit more, put a touch on that one part. I don't know.
Well, remember, prequel. This is a prequel.
Sure.
So this is, the way this plays out. And like I said, I definitely think you should just read the Future Imperfect story, just to see all the little things that, see all the little notes that Peter David is putting in as a lead up to the original story, that hint toward the original story. Um, yeah, the reveal that I'm referring to is in fact what you're talking about at the end, and it took me by surprise, but it does make sense that that this character would have lasted into the post-apocalyptic, post-nuclear war,
Right.
uh, reality of in the Marvel universe.
Right. So yeah, Future Imperfect is how many issues? Like two or three?
Two.
It's two.
It's two. They're
Okay.
they're oversized issues, but it's two issues.
Gotcha.
We're not talking about the there have been a couple of Future Imperfect related books. There was a Secret Wars Future Imperfect book that's not necessary for this. This is
But I feel
literally
like I've read that.
right. This is literally a prequel to the original 92, 93. That's going back a long ways that Peter David and George Perez did. But I would note that Future Imperfect was essentially George Perez's comeback after years of kind of being an admittedly unreliable artist, and once he did Imperfect, comics management, people at DC and Marvel what was that company called? What was that company called that Mark Alessi did? No, not Malibu. CrossGen. The
Oh,
people at CrossGen gave Perez a bunch of money because he was able to show in Future Imperfect that he still had what it took to do comic book work and keep to a somewhat regular schedule. So
right. So was this before Teen Titan?
no, no. This is 92, 93.
Okay, so it's after. Okay.
This is after Infinity Gauntlet, which is where like Perez really kind of really messed up his reputation by not being able to finish that series. If you recall, he started that series and then Ron Lim finished it with Perez doing some of the covers and doing some of the inks to help out. So,
Gotcha. Gotcha.
but that's a story for another day. But yeah, Maestro number 2 definitely is a potential click of the week for me because of my the expectations that were like flipped on their head. My expectations were flipped upside down basically. So I definitely give Peter David some credit, and the artist on this is definitely doing a stellar job of not mimicking but definitely evoking some of the atmosphere in all of the previous Maestro books that we've seen. What's his name?
Yeah, that was some good art in this.
Herman Peralta.
Mm-hmm.
Right. As well, Dale Keown does a backup story which ties into some of the questions that people had when it came to reading the original Future Imperfect.
Oh, okay. So that part was also.
interesting.
So that part was also somewhat in there.
No, but it just answers a question.
Okay.
When you read Future Imperfect, you'll see why that little two or three page backup story at the end wasn't necessary, but at the same time filled in a blank.
Okay. I will say on that part because I think I have it in my notes. So if you have been reading like Avengers of the Wasteland, like I have or something like that, you know that a certain person ends up wielding the hammer of Thor after around this time. And granted, and like this is taking place like well before that stuff, but we see somebody else that is worthy of wielding it. And I was like, I'm not, and yeah, I'm not sure who this person was, but I know who this person is in relation to another character in this story. So I guess I will have to read Future Imperfect since Agent 70 is trying to twist my arm.
Hey, it's 2 issues.
Yeah, I know. I guess so. The one thing that I was kind of weird about was like, why does this other character have Beast's fur? That seemed kind of creepy. But regardless, that is Maestro number 2, and we'll see. Again, this is another one of those that's like taking place at a certain time that's setting up something. And to get to that point, there is an article we'll get to later about Peter David's kind of once Maestro is finished, like he's pretty much setting up for something with this. So this is pretty much going to be one of those ones that's like, yeah, there's something that's going to come out of this that's going to get touched upon sooner rather than later, I would assume, but we shall see. So next up, forgot one more before we get into the rapids. Let's go with the Immortal She-Hulk #1, actually.
Okay.
So this is pretty much I could say it's the last of the Empire stuff. It is the last of the Empire related stuff, but kind of sort of tangentially. Like it definitely does touch upon Empire, but the crux of the book has more to do with if the name implies anything, more of what is going on with Immortal Hulk than it ever did with with Empire. So the fact that they kind of partially labeled this as an Empire tie-in, and that tie-in sure is there, it's really less of a case. But basically, we start off the book where we're seeing, we pretty much get a little bit of background into Jin's origin. Well, we get the final beats of, of Jin's origin, but it's also put together with her going into the realm down below, or the number of times that she has met death and has gone into the place down below, and the people she ends up talking to while she's there, interspersed with, her talking to Wolverine about, because that part I think was set up like after Empire, and she's talking to Wolverine about, resurrection, knowing everything that's going on with Krakoa, and that conversation is kind of what it is. But then it kind of starts flashing back into the times that She-Hulk has met death, and not the actual personification of death, but has actually died in one way or another. Which part of it kind of irks me, because one, it goes back to Civil War II, which was not great, but also it feels like it kind of retcons. It maybe didn't. It kind of retcons when and what she died of to a point in that. Because if you think about so her first death was technically when she became She-Hulk, and she got the transfusion from Bruce and all that kind of stuff. So all that kind of comes into. Then it goes into. I think it does go into Civil War after that, Civil War II, and that, and this happened at the beginning of Civil War II, where Thanos came to attack, and a bunch of heroes were there, and then they're not working together, caused some things to go awry, and She-Hulk gets blasted by War Machine, who died on the spot. But then later on in Civil War II, she ends up dying in the hospital bed which was still back then kind of crazy. Like Tony Stark and Carol Danvers was arguing, while they were visiting her, and then she ends up dying after saying some words, and that's got put in there. But there's a new wrinkle to that part, which I won't go into. That comes out into this, but in like I said, in between all of this, she ends up going to the place down below and talking to people like Bruce's dad, like I can't remember who she talked to the first time, if she talked to anybody in the first time. And her various remembrances of being down there. And then, of course, the last time being Empire, and it goes into the final beats of that. And then she goes back into the place down below and meets another character who we're, at this point in the Immortal Hulk story, we've, seeing bigger things coming from this character. And again, I won't spoil that part. But this character and her have an interaction, and the character's basically said, "Yeah, you don't want to come back here again," and that's what ends this issue, and has Jin pretty much shook at the end of it.
I mean, ultimately, what we thought would happen actually happens in this issue, especially because of the title. This character, She-Hulk, really has not played much of a role in the Immortal Hulk series. Only at the very beginning
Hmm.
did She-Hulk and the Avengers show up and play any sort of significant role in the Immortal Hulk story. But now this is Al Ewing bringing Jen Walters fully into the Immortal Hulk realm, given the events of, and basically tying into the events of She-Hulk's character arc over what the last several years, Civil War II and now Empire,
Hmm.
and that major changes to She-Hulk are now coming out of those two events. One, we got the Gray She-Hulk that came out of Civil War II.
Yeah,
That's what's touched on here,
a little bit.
um,
Yeah.
and and now we get the fully realized Immortal She-Hulk that comes out of Empire. So this is, to me, this is sort of Al Ewing bringing all of the Hulk characters back into the fold now,
Hmm.
or at least involving them in this immortal storyline, so that no one is left out. That's at least my take on this.
Sure.
I
Yeah.
think see what happens to uh, Thunderbolt Ross sooner rather than later, before the Immortal series is up.
Right, because we
So
talked about that, like, yeah, the whole Red Hulk. We talked about that with Immortal Hulk, like last week or whatever the case was, like whether we were going to actually see Red Hulk in any way, shape, or form, which I can't imagine we'd not.
right,
But yeah, this was definitely like, my issues with the part of, the part of the retconning of that aside, like this was definitely a well done, and the timing was good for it, obviously, because coming out of Empire and Al Ewing doing Empire, and having set up to kind of bring this part into the fold, and whether we see She-Hulk or Hulk, um, you know, coming back into Immortal Hulk, in any significant fashion is a thing, but um, we definitely have seen, especially in the latest issues of Immortal Hulk, that where this stuff, where in the end of this issue, has been coming more into play going forward. So it was definitely nicely done, with the exception of that one part that I didn't really care for. So still waiting to see what's going on with the rest of Immortal Hulk.
mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. It's like, as a fan of She-Hulk, like, always good to see She-Hulk in her books, and she's with the Avengers now, but that's it is on these. So anything that's kind of giving her own thing, um, has always been a treat for me in one way, shape, or form. Actually, that last She-Hulk book, the last Hulk book, where she actually became Grey Hulk, I never did finish reading that one, but it seemed to go a place that I never did finish up. So anyway, unless you got something else on that one, we can push on to rapid.
We'll go to rapid fire. I'll spin it up.
All right. Rapid fire, cuz. You want to go?
All right. Don't think you have this book on your list. Daredevil number 22.
Nope.
Daredevil gets arraigned. If you're not familiar with where we are, I think you should go back and read this Zdarsky run. It's actually pretty good. Obviously, we are 22 issues in, but it is worth it. Although we are in familiar territory for anyone who read Bendis's Daredevil stuff and the beginning of Brubaker's run, and we're going. As Roddykat mentioned earlier, those are kind of deep cuts now. Not as deep apparently as going back to the Miller era now, but we're reflecting. It's definitely a sign of our age that we can go back and refer to these books and make them seem like they were very recent when they are in fact not very recent. So again, back to this issue, Daredevil gets arraigned and Foggy is putting his defense together. Daredevil actually goes to Tony Stark, the interconnectedness of Marvel, to make financial moves against the Stromwind. So this is something that relates back to what has happened in these last 22 issues. At the end, Zdarsky brings back a character from the Mark Waid era of DD to aid in his defense. So that was actually a nice little callback. Next up is, all right, we covered these three books, is Spider-Woman #4. I think Roddykat is going to contribute to this. I will
Possibly.
just say that I'm not as familiar with Jessica Drew's origin as I might need to be, given what happens in this book. I will have to reread this to see if I get all of the things it seems like I'm supposed to get out of this story.
Yeah, this part of her history, I'm not also well versed in the whole Wonder Gore and her family and that kind of. So like there is some definitely stuff that gets touched upon, but it's like I don't remember some of the stuff going on either. So I'm kind of with you.
Right. I mean, I don't know if I need to go back and check the Ohatmu entries and then do a deep dive in Marvel Unlimited to see what's there. But I was very much, very, very much just kind of like, oh, okay, I'm just taking this as it goes. And letting, and letting the story just sort of sink in a little bit. And as I mentioned, I might just end up reading it again just to see, if it makes more sense the second time around.
Right. But it definitely outside of that does kind of pop off because this is a pretty action. It's actually kind of amusing too. So basically, there's a family reunion of sorts as of the end of the last issue because apparently, well, one, we found out that Jessica has a younger brother, and we also found out in this issue that she was in a coma a little bit longer than she
Well, it's
thought.
a younger, older brother, right?
Well, yeah, but she was in a coma for a while, so that they kind of mentioned that here. It's like, no, you were out for a little bit longer than you think you are. So, but she has a younger brother who also has a kid with her. Who the quest was going into this volume. They're trying to find. Well, she did not know that was her brother up until last issue, but trying to find a cure for his daughter, who is also related, but also come to find out that Jessica's mom is alive, and had been still in Wonder Gore and was apparently doing some things and was pretty much manipulating some stuff behind the scenes in a certain in a certain way. But now it's all back together, and the person that that Jessica had a run into earlier, like in the first couple of issues, she's had dealings with their family before, who she killed this other person's dad, but has come back in this one and kind of starts a fight, and and Jessica's family fights together against this person, and at the end of this issue, something potentially could be happening to Jessica. And as the writer of this, Carla Pacheco, says in the letters page, like come back next week. Y'all are not gonna like, and next time y'all are not gonna like me, as she says. So I don't know what she's gonna end up doing, but yeah. So there's something gonna happen. Anywho.
Right. All right. Last for me is Dark Knight's Death Metal Speed Metal.
Excellent!
I understand from, thanks to PCN_Dirt actually, that Joshua Williamson is ending his run on the Flash series this week, and
that
he
part we
is
knew,
also. What's that?
So that part we knew coming before now, but yes.
Right. But he also writes this one shot related to the Dark Knight Death Metal Dark Knight's Death Metal event.
Excellent!
In this issue, Wally West, the OG Wally West, has the conversation with Barry Allen that should have happened years ago in our time. Whether this has an effect on the heroes in Crisis stupidity is yet to be seen. So, that's my that's my commentary. Shots fired. So we will see how that all goes, but that's essentially what happens in this issue. It does tie in with the most recent events in Dark Knight's Death Metal.
Excellent!
Alrighty then. So I'll get to my last two books. Fantastic Four Antithesis #2. Again, this is another one of those that's kind of time displaced, but is going to go somewhere. We don't know where it is at this point. So this is kind of this is an FF during the time of Valeria Richards being a baby. So that sets it up. This is, that there was an altercation. Well, there is in this particular issue an altercation in the negative zone, which they just got through dealing with Annihilus last issue of this, but that kind of comes back into play because they went into the negative zone looking for one Galen, aka Galactus, who'd been taken down and thrown in there by this new villain, who is apparently a negative zone, a denizen of the negative zone, if I'm reading it right, who basically controls zombies and is spreading negative zone zombieism. That's the takeaway I got from this, and if I'm wrong, then whatever. But yeah, they go into the negative zone. They come across Galactus, aka Galen. They have another fight with Annihilus, and then end up on Galactus's ship, coincidentally, thanks to the Silver Surfer. So again, don't know where this is going. What's going to be the outcome of this? And given what's going on in Thor, like we know that somehow, some way, Galactus ends up getting back to his former prominence. And my last book is Doctor Doom #7. So Doom returns to Latveria while Blue Marvel goes through with Doom's plan from some issue back that I can't even remember when they even talked, or he even got word to him. So because the crux of this whole volume has been like, yeah, Doom's been framed, some things happened, so he got exiled from Latveria, but now Doom's back in Latveria, and he's questioning all of his loyal followers, including his adopted son, Kristoff, who in this issue may or may not be that anymore. But there's also, and I'm taking this for a Robocop reference, when Doom kind of gets part of his revenge for his exile in a "can you fly, Bobby" moment, kind of. But if you end up reading this, you'll see what I'm talking about. But at the end of this issue, we get back to this other subplot of this space station or whatever that potentially is failing and maybe dooming Earth. The fixing of that by one Blue Marvel and another, let's say, Spider. Well, you might as well say he's been classically a Spider-Man villain, but at this point, which is another weird part about this, because it doesn't look like the version that we know of from being of recent years, because it looks more like a classic version of this character, less than his superior version. So I'm not sure if what was, the potential art was like for this, unless something's happened in another book that this character is going back to his old looks. I don't know. So that's a weird thing that happened to this, and somebody may or may not be able to shed light on that. But nevertheless, that's where we are with this Doctor Doom book. After it's been some time since the last issue, and some things being missed on, and that is my books of the week. So now we're getting on to clicks of the week. And we already have a couple of books from our other co-hosts who are not here. The aforementioned PCN_Dirt's pick is The Flash 762. And I believe he did have a note on this in our back channel. It's the end of Williamson's 100 issue plus issue 1, as Agent 70 said. 100 issues possible plus annual specials. It's time to see it end because he used every opportunity to build from issue to issue and create a dense mythology, but it will probably help to lighten it up a bit for new readers, is what he says. And Tim says 10 of Swords, X of Swords, creation #1. which
All right.
we already talked about.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of in between two books. I'm in between Ten of Swords Creation #1 and Maestro #2. I definitely enjoyed the walk down memory lane without actually consulting my copies of Future Imperfect for Maestro #2 until I was done with the book.
Hmm.
After I read the book, I did crack open Marvel Unlimited to check on those two on those books again, but you know, I could have gone long box diving, but
As
in
you are
any
wont
event,
to do, yes.
in any event, I'm trying to think what I'm going to choose. How about you?
I am actually in between X of Swords Creation and, weirdly enough, Spider-Man is kind of a potential pick. Spider-Woman, excuse me, is a potential pick, but it's probably between that or X of Swords. Like, that Juggernaut book's also kind of sort of compelling, but I don't know if I can give it to that one. So, and Immortal She-Hulk kind of, but
I think I'm gonna jump on the Ten of Swords train and make it Ten of Swords Creation #1 for me as well.
Nice. And for myself, Bink. I am going to actually go with that is a very good pick, but I'm going to go with Spider-Woman. Because that is just kind of bananas in a way that I kind of appreciate.
It's a little too. I was about to say it's a little too much in that direction for me. I do appreciate that it was kind of lighthearted, and there's lots of fun interactions between Jessica Drew and her newfound or newly rediscovered mother. Let's put it that way.
Right.
So, and going down her like I said, I think it was just because I was just so kind of off-putted how little I knew of her origin.
Sure.
That it made it harder for me to enter into the story and kind of suspend the disbelief for a little while. So, which is like the opposite of my experience with Maestro #2, because I knew it. I was just like, oh, so this is how it all fits together. So that kind of we had like the converse experiences with those two books, or at least maybe you didn't let that hinder your experience on Spider-Woman. So
yeah, nah.
All right, cool. So we'll go to our first ad read of the night before we get to the news. Let's start with Funko. Fun at first sight. It's your home for exclusive collectibles such as their world famous pop vinyl bobbleheads, apparel including t-shirts, hats, and socks, and brand merchandise such as custom DIY pop figures, art books, and skateboards. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy 10% off your entire purchase when shopping at Funko. So place your first order with 10% off. And to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us. That's cspn.us. Then click on the Keep Our Podcasts free link at the top of the page. From there, scroll down to the Funko link and place your order. When you get to the checkout, put in the offer code SHOP10 for your 10% off discount. Funko through cspn.us. Do it today. And we head into the news.
And we start off, as we do every week, with the cinematic news. A little bit of Mockingbird news here, actually. So, Power Book 2 producer has written a solo pilot for Adrian Palicki. While actress Adrian Palicki's take on Mockingbird hasn't been seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe for some time, which is kind of a crime. Power Book 2 Ghost co-executive producer and writer Jeffrey Thorne has revealed that he had written a solo pilot for the character. Thorne asked his followers, "What if I had already written a pilot for this actor to play this character?" Hence, it's not hypothetical. So So when asked if he was referring to the scrapped Marvel's Most Wanted spinoff or pilot pitch, Thor replied pilot. In a later tweet, Thorne uploaded a sample of the pilot script, which seemingly involved the heroine being on a mission, stating above the image, "Here's a drip." So, yeah, and if you're watching the video, you can see, you can see his tweets right there. Which, as a fan of Mockingbird and as a fan of Adrian Pilicki in that role, and I guess her short role is in John Wick also, I would have loved to have seen how that played off, because that Marvel's Most Wanted thing kind of never happened. Well, it never happened, and since they had written her and her husband off of Agents of S.W.O.R.D. and never to return, then that kind of also sucks, because I kind of wish they had brought him back, or had been able to bring him back. Well, I mean, technically they probably could have, but the way they've written him off the show, it didn't seem like they were ever going to come back. Now, they didn't kill him, but they just written him off in a way that seemed like, well, we ain't coming back here no more.
Right.
But anyway, next up.
Right. Next up, the first WandaVision trailer is totally bonkers, and you'll love it. What does the Marvel Cinematic Universe look like in 2020? It doesn't look like a lot, unfortunately. It's not cinematic, though. It's on Disney Plus, and it's WandaVision. Surprising audiences during the 2020 Emmy Awards. So that's why it dropped at that time. I just got a notification like, oh, check this out. I was like, oh, okay.
Same here.
Marvel revealed its first look at the upcoming show WandaVision, starring Elizabeth Olsen and Paul Bettany, each reprising their roles from the Avengers films, which is extremely complicated when you realize, well, Vision is dead. So the show plays with that by blending familiar sitcom tropes with superhero humor into a package that looks kind of wild, but also insanely fun. You should watch that trailer and figure out what the hell is going on for yourself. Or at least try to.
Yeah, try to, because there are some things that people have picked up in the trailer with certain characters or whatnot. So, but no one knows what's actually going on with that thing. Did you watch it?
I did. It was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's to say the least. So
it was very, very interesting. I was just like, oh, okay. So this is what, this is where we might be going.
Right. Yeah, they've been kind of playing with that whole sitcom and whatnot thing since this whole time, and just to see the actual trailer is like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I was about to say, I wouldn't be surprised if like maybe somehow Mojo is involved, but I doubt that very seriously, because the X stuff is not necessarily, but we'll see how that happens. But on that note, there was also some more images that came around. IGN kind of broke down some images from the trailer, which you can look at in the show notes. As I scroll through some of it right here. So yeah. Next up, okay, don't you start. Ms. Marvel lands Bad Boys for Life and The Punisher directors. So Ms. Marvel has found its directors, and it's the most expansive crew Marvel Studios has put together for a Disney Plus show yet. Bad Boys for Life Helmer, Adil El Arbi, and Bilal Fallah have been confirmed to be directing multiple episodes of the series, something first reported by The Direct earlier this month. A new report from The Hollywood Reporter not only confirms the pair is joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but it also adds Sharmeen Obaid Shinoy, and I apologize if I'm screwing up your names, and Mira Minon will also be boarding the project to direct additional episodes. So, cool. And then it just lists their credits here, which we don't necessarily have to go through, but yeah, some stuff some stuff you might not know.
Okay.
So, next up.
All right. When we finally get to, I was about to say maybe I should wrap these two stories together.
Yes, actually do that.
when we finally get to the Black Widow movie, which unfortunately now, due to COVID-19, has moved on the calendar to uh, May 7th, 2021, making it a summer release. The original, well, no, the second date that had been pushed to was November 6th of this year, but now it's been pushed to May 7th of 2021. And that is part of a major overhaul of the Marvel Studios film schedule, pushing everything back. In news related to the Black Widow movie, the the character, the actress who's playing, I believe, Yelena Belova,
Hmm.
uh, Florence Pugh, says that the Black Widow movie is going to be dealing with the heavy subject matter of the abuse of women. That is according to the star Florence Pugh. One of the most interesting things about the film is how far Kate went with it. Kate, I believe, is the director,
Yes.
and the film is about the abuse of women. It's about how they get involuntary hysterectomies by the age of 8. It's about girls who are stolen from around the world. It's so painful and it's so important. It's about, obviously, this is using the experience, the tactics of the Red Room as an allegory for things that are happening now around the world. So, these are important topics that that you don't necessarily expect to see being approached in a superhero movie.
Yeah, but when you get folks involved that can effectively do things on this, you kind of get this kind of stuff, which is refreshing to see. Because sometimes you just get to see like, oh, we're just gonna lightly touch it, but not really explore the stuff. Yeah, from the people who normally get stuff. Um, Next up, though, Spider-Man fan art imagines the boys star Karen Fukuhara as Silk. Um, Digital artist Malcolm Kenneth creates artwork that features Karen Fukuhara, who currently stars on The Boys, as a live-action Silk, because there has been talk of a live-action Silk show that is potentially in the works. So yeah, you can see the art here on the well, in our show notes definitely. But if you're watching the video, and sometimes maybe you should get some of this stuff, you can see the image right here. That was off of this person's Instagram page. Looks good. Oh, cool. You see a little Spidey in the background also. Wait, is there
Mm.
another image? Oh no, this is just a close up. Oh, this is a closer up shot. But cool. Next up,
All right, next up, HBO Max recently announced that it has ordered a third season of Harley Quinn, bringing the DC Universe original series exclusively to the new platform. HBO Max celebrated the announcement with an image showcasing Harley and Poison Ivy's romance. Also of note, I don't know if you have this further down about what they're doing with DC Universe.
I do. Yes. Hmm.
I just wanted to note that they are giving people who were DC Universe subscribers um, what was it, like a free month or two of HBO Max, something like that. There's some sort of offer that they sent out to people.
Well, there's also also the current offer that I think I took advantage of that we talked about before, to where that also kind of applies basically. I think they give those folks like a 6 months discount or something like, or rather that to no, yeah, basically the HBO Max stuff is folded into the price of this DC Universe up
Hmm.
until I believe 6 months. Well, within 6 months, but it's now like 3 or 4 more months left or something like that. Which for people like me who was at the start of DC Universe, which we'll get into that or when we get down to that part. Um, Next up, the CW's Supergirl to end with season 6. So this was kind of a surprise. The network announced the long-running Arrowverse series will air 20 more episodes before drawing to a close. The sixth and final season of the series will begin production this month, with plans to premiere during the CW's 2021 mid-season lineup. The reason behind the decision to end the series has not been given at this time, and I will just go ahead and take this next story and say that Supergirl's Melissa Benoist promises one hell of a final season. After the announcement of Supergirl's sixth season would be its last, star Melissa Benoist shared a heartfelt message along with the photo of herself from the first season. To say it's been an honor portraying this iconic character would be a massive understatement, Benoist wrote on Instagram. Seeing the incredible impact the show has made on young girls around the world has always left me humbled and speechless. She's had that impact on me too. She's taught me strength I didn't know I had, to hope in the darkness of places, and that we are stronger when we are united. What she stands for pushes all of us to be better. She's changed my life for the better, and I'm forever grateful. And you can see the picture that came along with the caption right here on the video, and on her Instagram if you follow her. Next up.
All right, next up, Warner Brothers recently announced its production schedule for the remainder of Greg Berlanti's shows on the CW, including Supergirl, The Flash, DC's Legends of Tomorrow, All American, Superman and Lois, Titans, Titans, Kung Fu, and Stargirl. Riverdale and Batwoman resumed production earlier this month amidst the coronavirus pandemic. According to Deadline, Supergirl plans to start filming its sixth and final season in Vancouver on September 28th, as long as the show negotiates a deal with local unions to comply with SAG's COVID guidelines. Good for them.
Indeed. Yeah, that Kung Fu one was like, really? Are they still doing that, huh? Anywho, next up, Batwoman adds 2 new characters to the Arrowverse in season 2. The CW's Batwoman has announced the addition of 2 additional cast members to the ever-growing roster of the Arrowverse. According to Deadline, newcomer Leah Gibson, from Jessica Jones, and Nathan Owens from Devious Maids has been cast as characters named Tatiana and Ocean, respectively. Tatiana is a skilled assassin known as the Whisper, who has a fierce loyalty to her boss, Sophia, who we talked about being on the show last week. It is possible Tatiana may be in part based on the DC chapter Whisper Adair, a member of the League of Assassins. Ocean is a Zen gardener and loyal soldier who comes to Gotham looking for a fresh start. So, there you go. Next.
All right, next up, Zack Snyder's Justice League is going to begin production next month, with a number of cast members returning for the updated film. The director will return to the helm of DC's superhero team-up film in October, according to The Hollywood Reporter. New scenes will be shot for the long-awaited Snyder Cut of Justice League, which will be released on HBO Max in 4 installments sometime next year. The new scenes involve Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Ray Fisher, and more. Apparently not Henry Cavill, though.
Right. Which I think was another article that came out. So I like Dan Slott's thing on this. I don't know if you saw that tweet.
No, what was it?
And first of all, I'm just going to go ahead and say is like, first of all, I thought this thing was in the can and presumably mostly done. Like, yes, he left production for a while, but supposedly it come out and said, like, yeah, it's pretty much mostly done. There was not much. Now we find out they're doing new scenes, but Slott basically says, well, I know I'm paraphrasing. He's like, hey, I have a movie that's already in the can. If I remember, I'm doing this from memory. So I have a memory that's already done. It's already in the can, just ready to come out. I just need $700 million to finish it up and bring it back out. Any takers or something like that? So I got a nice little laugh out of that. So yeah, this Snyder Cut business, I just anyway. Next up, come on, there we go. Suicide Squad is getting an HBO Max spinoff starring John Cena as Peacemaker. Who wants this? Who needs this? Why? The world of
I'll say apparently someone who's already seen him in Suicide Squad and thinks he needs a spinoff.
Well, or specifically James Gunn, probably. But yeah, I guess I don't even know. Anyway, the world of Suicide Squad is rapidly expanding. John Cena's Peacemaker, who will appear in James Gunn's DC team-up movie next year, is getting his own spin-off movie on HBO Max. We didn't see that coming. We probably should have, though. I'm over the moon, excited to be working on #Peacemaker with my pals John Cena and producer Peter Safran on this new HBO Max series from Warner Brothers, Gunn announced on Twitter. Cena added, working alongside, you know what, screw that, because this is bro hugs and circle jerks, whatever. As per Hollywood Reporter, Gunn will write all 8 episodes of the spin-off series and will even direct some of the episodes himself. It will be his first television directorial credit in over a decade. Guardians of the Galaxy is not expected to be affected by this news. So, and there's no other story details about what's going to happen. So, and that is the end of the cinematic news. Now we transition over to the comic book news.
All right. Several ideas from Batman the Animated Series have been introduced in the comics, which originally inspired the show, such as Harley Quinn and the revamped origin of Mr. Freeze. The most recent aspect of the animated series, which has made it into the comics, is the fictional mystery man, the Gray Ghost. Interesting. So, let me open this article and see what is going on here. So this is in, this was in Detective Comics number 1027.
Mhm.
Interesting. I didn't finish reading. I just I barely had a chance to skim through it, so I guess maybe I'll sit down and read it. I know it was PCN_Dirt's Click of the Week last week, so
Right.
but it's one of those long, a million-page long anniversary issues. So
Gotcha. So yeah, so apparently the Gray Ghost from the Batman TES is now canon to a point. So cool. And I know they're also doing that other Batman the Animated Series comic series, which they've been kind of a continuation of it, which I haven't read any of. That's doing some things in there. So there you go, just all wrapping back around. Detective Comics reveals which villain finally kills Bruce Wayne, and this is also from Detective Comics number 27. I don't know who this person is. So I don't know if you read that part of Detective 27 and know anything about that.
I skimmed it. He's kind of like a B-level, B-level bad guy for Batman.
Right. So basically, there's this. We won't spoil who it is, but basically, this villain apparently,
In a very Captain Marvel fashion.
yeah, apparently hits Batman with an AOE, and which eventually will lead to Batman's death at some point, I suppose. I guess does that mean that this is also following into like the Batman Beyond stuff? Because I can't remember if it was like cancer or anything like that.
Oh, it's old age.
I know, no, it was old age, but he was also had like heart problems and something else was going on. At least I think. I may be totally wrong about that part. So I don't know if this is playing into that stuff or not. But that's also, I don't know if that was ever canonized as the way he goes out, because that was also from the cartoon and not, I feel like they played with that in the comics at some point, but I'm not sure if none of that still plays, or if they brought that back in. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Next up,
God, the new Batman Catwoman series launching this December has a long history, both in comics history and in the announcement and original plans for its release. Writer Tom King, with frequent collaborating artist Clay Mann, plans to take the Bruce and Selina romance that blossomed in the writer's Batman run out on its own, while the monthly Batman title, with James Tynion IV, focused on Bruce's more DC Universe-centric stories. And it really hasn't played out like that. It's just very weird. Bruce and Selina's romance has been on again, off again for decades, going back to when Catwoman first debuted in comic books in the past decade or so with Heart of Hush and now King's ongoing Batman story. The two appear to be all in making their story happen. How that plays with how the Catwoman behaves in Joker War, we'll see. It's probably going to play right out of that. So
Yeah, then famously, Tom King did not get to finish his run on Batman because he had a whole thing in that which this was involved with, and that didn't end up happening because probably stupid fans and higher ups cave into that. We don't even know, but regardless, it didn't happen. Because who wants something different when you can have the same old Batman? Batman. Speaking of Batman, Batman amidst Superman, Wonder Woman, and Blank should be DC's Trinity, and this is from Batman and Outsiders 16, which I'm pretty sure none of us are reading. Well, Dirt might be actually, now that I think about it, or was at some point. In the pop culture, the DC Trinity is one of the iconic symbols around. Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman have all stood tall for years in various comics, cartoons, animated films, and recently the DCEU. They're a global phenomenon, and it's why the publisher hasn't really tinkered with the lineup. Well, that's sure. No matter how many awesome heroes come up from the Justice League's ranks. However, courtesy of Batman and Outsider 16, we find out who Bruce Wayne thinks should be swapped in for him. And the ironic thing is, the Dark Knight's been training this hero recently to max out his potential. And this hero is Black Lightning.
okay.
So, yeah, sure. In the DC Rebirth era, this incarnation of the Outsiders hasn't been handled that well by the Bat. It's why he wanted Jefferson Pierce, not just as an educator, but as someone who has understood fatherhood a little bit more. So, yeah, this kind of goes into a little bit of background on how did it all come to be, and probably going into that Batman and the Outsiders book. So, interesting. Next up.
All right, DC has unveiled not just the first look. There's a lot of DC news this week. DC has unveiled not just the first look at the new villain of its upcoming Endless Winter crossover, the Frost King. Oh yeah, yoy. Does he have a jingle too when he's selling ice cream?
Stop.
Come on, folks, if you listened to last week's show or watched last week's show, you know that I've got jokes for days when it comes to the Frost King, but I'm going to move on. I haven't even looked at the character design art from artist Howard Porter on that is on this web that is part of this Newsarama / Games Radar story. Whatchamacallit? DC also added an informal name to the collective of ancient heroes who once fought the mystical menace, Justice League Viking. Oh my God, the pain! Oh, the pain! Oh, the pain! Oh,
Okay, Dr. Smith.
gosh. Hold on. I'm looking for it. Hold on.
Ooh, I'm dying.
That's so bad.
So yeah, so we've talked about that also. The shades of 1 million BC Avengers things going on right now, and I don't know. Well, DC also did a 1 million BC event like way back in the day, but which may or may not have anything to do with either one of these. But yeah, it's a thing. Next up, Death Metal reveals the fate of the Hall of Justice. If
Excellent.
also want to hit that other cue,
Which one?
the Hall of Justice one.
Oh, it's the transition.
Meanwhile, at the Hall of Justice.
Which I always love that. Shout out to the Super Friends. But yeah, apparently this is spoilers from last week's Justice League 53, which I didn't read, and I think, well, I know you did, Agent 70. But basically, it's, during this whole death metal thing, you know, things have been happening, and apparently the Hall of Justice, something happens to the Hall of Justice. And also, and they also bring up that when they they made the Hall of Justice into a Transformer during that Justice League story. Remember that?
Yep.
That's all funny, but yeah. So something happens in this, or at least the Hall of Justice gets brought up in that, and whatever happened to it, which we won't go into, in case you hadn't read it yet or even care. Next up.
In September, Suicide Squad number 9 by Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo DC is going to kill off longtime villain turned anti-hero Floyd Lawton, aka Deadshot. The issue will see Task Force X attempt to take down Ted Kord, but in order to do so, the world's deadliest assassin will have to do the one thing he's never done for the cause, and that is die.
So, two things. One, Ted Kord is apparently back, and wait, is he like the bad guy? Is he doing to Deadshot as somebody did to him back as in Maxwell Lord did to him? And by the way, that is for this week's Suicide Squad, which none of us read.
Right.
But also wouldn't have anything to do with the certain fact that there's a certain movie coming out that does not have Deadshot in it.
Huh.
Coincidentally, couldn't possibly be. Anyway, next up. Probably should have put this before that, but regardless, from Death Metal, Wally West unleashes the Flash secret weapon, and this is a spoiler for Dark Knight Death Metal Speed Metal #1, which Agent 70 has already gone over, but I don't believe mentioned what happened with that part about it. The TLDR is apparently somebody else comes back. Or, no, it just talks about, oh, so Wally West uses a trick from Johnny Quick in some kind of way. I don't know if you remember the beats on that, but yeah. If anybody wants to... Huh?
Right, he brings up the speed formula.
Yeah. So, that's significant to those who it's significant for. Next up.
All right, next up, what are we up to? DC has launched a new free original digital comic book series based on the HBO Max series Raised by Wolves, published in collaboration with HBO Max. The free 8-page HBO Max / Raised by Wolves #1 serves as a backstory to the recently launched sci-fi series of the same name by Ridley Scott on Warner Media's streaming service. I have not yet had a chance to watch this.
Oh, you gotta love synergy, don't you?
Yep.
Next up, Jim Lee promises a major announcement regarding DC Universe's future, to which I will skip a couple. I'm going to skip the next one and add in that to this because so wait. Oh wait, DC fans wonder how the DC Universe subscription show will end up. Agent 7 is kind of already talked about part of that. Given that most of its shows have migrated to other channels, according to DC publisher and chief creative officer Jim Lee, the service still has a future. Lee made an announcement via Twitter after congratulating DC Universe's Doom Patrol on being renewed for season 3. And it quotes, stay tuned next week for big news about the DC Universe and its exciting future. To which we already know what that future is because it is becoming Marvel Universe. I mean, Marvel Unlimited, basically. So there was also news that came out that basically DC Universe is getting rid of all of its video stuff and pretty much going into the Marvel Unlimited route, like I just said, and sticking with the books. Like, if you did not know, DC Universe pretty much had you could read their an archive of their old comic books, but also you could watch their shows and movies, which I kind of liked. I would kind of wish the Marvel Unlimited went that route, but that was not going to ever happen. And apparently, corporate synergy or whatever being what it was, DC Universe is kind of going the other way with it, which is probably a good move, as you know, as far as keeping it and not just totally destroying that whole thing, because it's a pretty good service. You know, they're still coming up, they're still adding stuff to it and whatnot, but I kind of liked it the way it was. But that's just me, and apparently that doesn't matter. So DC Universe is going to turn into DC Universe Infinite, a premier digital comic book service set to launch on January 21st, 2021. And this is pretty much from from DC side anyway that I'm reading off. With access to more than 24,000 comic books at launch, DC Universe Infinite subscribers will also encounter digital first comic books exclusive access to DC fan events, as well as a steady stream of recently released comics 6 months after the physical versions hit store shelves, which I believe Marvel Unlimited is like 4 to 6 months. I think they've kind of gotten it down to 4, but I'm not entirely sure if they're keeping that up. Anyway, following its initial launch, DC Universe Infinite will be expanding globally in summer 2021. So what are you thinking about that?
What's the price on it? It's like $6.99 or $7.99.
It should be, yes. It says DC Universe Infinite will be $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year.
Right.
So it's kind of comparable to,
Yeah, I was about to say, if it's not roughly the same price.
Yeah, I believe it is actually, because I think Marvel Unlimited is like either $6.99 or $7.99. It's one of those two.
Right. Whatchamacallit? I mean, you get the discount if you go with a full year.
Correct.
I'm glad to hear it. I'm glad to hear that, if I was really into DC, I might consider getting the service also.
We've gotten use out of it. Well, at least I have.
What's that?
I said we've gotten use out of it. At least I have.
Right, but my free preview ended at the beginning of the year.
Sure.
And I got some use out of it. I did watch Titans. I did watch Doom Patrol. All that stuff's going to be on HBO Max, which I already paid for.
Right.
So I don't know if I'm going to make use of DC Universe Infinite if I do decide to get it in the upcoming year. I don't know if I read enough DC to warrant that monthly expenditure or that yearly expenditure.
Yeah, so it's also worth noting though that one DC Universe as it stands right now is $14.99 and still has the video component. So, and as you said earlier, and as this article says here, executive members or those joining up during the pre-order offer when you will receive a special thank you voucher redeemable at the DC shop, subject to terms and conditions. Annual subscribers will receive a $25 voucher, while monthly subscribers will receive a $10 voucher. That's for their shop.
Right.
But as you said earlier, they're supposed to be getting a discount off of the DC Universe. I think it says
no. They're getting a discount off of HBO Max.
HBO Max, like yes, it does say that right here.
To HBO Max.
Right. Special offers for eligible monthly subscriber to upgrade the service to include HBO Max for an additional $4.99 a month. This is for DC's Universe subscribers already, for a limited time, which is now available through October 31st. So I was kind of wondering how they were going to do that, because I did see that in my thing, and I was like, well, wait, why is it? I thought that was an ongoing thing for that, but apparently this is just a limited time thing, which they did not initially say, or confirm rather. So yeah, so you can get HBO Max for an additional $5 at this point, which I guess I see why they did that, because now they can basically say, well, now it's going to the actual price. Because, like I said, DC Universe was $15 a month, so that $5 kind of partially takes it down, because it's going to be a little bit less than that after this anyway. Going into the new service, the quote unquote new service. So, but also worth noting that a lot of DC stuff is on Comixology, and Comixology, their unlimited service. So. And also a lot of Marvel stuff, so you can kind of get the best of both worlds. And in addition to like other companies' stuff through that, it's not everything, but it's a good clump of stuff, and that's like $6.99 also, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, unless you're an adherent to like really making an effort to do a deep dive on something that wouldn't be in Comixology yet, you have to think very hard about maybe sticking to the Comixology Plus subscription.
That's correct. Yeah, because they, again, like I said, they don't have everything. So, and I think they even move some stuff in and out at times.
Right.
Next up,
it's a bird, it's a plane, it's a dream come true, because Daniel Day Kim is Superman. After DC Fandom's wild ride of announcements and special panel presentations, Variety debuted an exclusive video from the celebrity-filled charity re-recording of the 1940s Superman radio specials. Television and film stars Jason Alexander, Henry Winkler, Giancarlo Esposito, Tony Shalhoub, Alfre Woodard, CCH Pounder, and more gathered together to support the creative coalition with this special performance using original scripts from the decades old Superman radio series, which was recently revived from the Warner Brothers Studios vault. This unique vision of the Man of Steel portrays him in a new and exciting way. Each episode provides a fresh translation with a new cast of actors for each role. For example, both Wilson Cruz and Kim get their chance to shine with the red cape, and even Tim Daly, longtime voice of Clark Kent slash Kal-El in the Justice League and the Superman animated series, reprises his role from the past. Okay.
Yeah, and apparently Tim Daly is the head of the Creator Coalition, who's a part of this.
Right.
So there you go. So I'm gonna go back real quick because there was one that I missed, but that's not your fault. In that DC Future State, a publisher teases new event for early 2021. And it sounds like it is an event that was first referenced in Detective Comics 1027. So DC has released a teaser for an upcoming event called Future State, with the only details being the storyline that will debut in January and February of 2021. The Future State teaser is from the just-released DC Connect catalog. The naming of the event ties back to another tease for Generations Future State from writer Dan Jurgens and artist Kevin Nolan's Generations Fractured story from Detective Comics 2027, which was released last week. So yeah, there's going to be a new event, and since we know they're getting rid of that, they got rid of that Generations event, and 5G is no longer a thing, but I guess this is the one that they got in place of that. All right, so now we can go on to that bit of news about Miles' Spider-Man.
We can take that too. You'll have fun with it.
Oh, okay, fine. So yeah, we got a couple of articles on the new Spider-Man game coming out, or new Spider-Man Miles Morales game. One of them is first Spider-Man Miles Morales alternative costume suit revealed in PS5 pre-order details. So yeah, you can now pre-order that Miles Morales game if you wanted to. Let's see. It says the launch edition on PS5 gets you access to 2 exclusive suits alongside another bunch of goodies when the game hits next-gen consoles. The information comes from a new product listing on UK retailer Game. So this includes a copy of the game, the TRACK, aka the tracksuit, seen above, and the yet-to-be-announced second Spidey suit, a gravity well gadget, and 3 extra skill points. So basically some extra stuff. But we also come to find out that Sony has confirmed that there is no free PS5 upgrade for the PS4 Spider-Man players, which means that if you want the upgraded version of the original or the PS4 Spider-Man game, you would have to get the Ultimate Edition of the Miles Morales PS5 game. And if you bought the Miles Morales game on PS4, which will also be on, again, there is no free upgrade to the PS5 version, apparently. And that sucks, because it had come out like a while, or at least shortly after this, it was announced that would be a thing that was going on. So I don't know why they went back on it or whatever the case may be. But here's a statement on it. That says Marvel Spider-Man Remastered is an enhanced version of Marvel Spider-Man game and is included as a part of Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales Ultimate Edition for the PlayStation 5. In addition, players who purchased Miles Morales on PS4 can upgrade at no extra cost to the PS5 version. Okay, so that is happening, and take advantage of a paid upgrade to download Marvel's. Okay, I got it. So the Miles Morales game that you can buy on PS4 will get an upgrade to the PS5 version, but that version will not come with the remastered PS4 Spider-Man. I got it. Okay. I read that totally wrong. So, which means that if you wanted the upgraded Spider-Man, like I said, the original Spider-Man game, you would have to buy the Ultimate Edition, which has no upgrade path from PS4. Cool. Next up.
All right. God, what are we up to now? All right. Marvel's Avengers Weekly Reset adds new priority challenges and a big patch is coming. Developer Crystal Dynamics has detailed the latest weekly updates for Marvel's Avengers. The weekly reset has opened up 2 new priority missions during which players have to uncover a shield vault and fend off AIM forces in the process of unlocking it. The rewards for completing these missions will be unique gear that is not yet available anywhere else in the game. Modifiers are also active and include increased cryo damage from players, enemy health regeneration, and toxic hazards. Okay.
Nerd alert!
Age of 70 loves video game news around here, as you can see. But yeah, that's.
I was about to say, I actually happened to be in suburban New York, much to my chagrin last weekend. And I happened to be near, because of COVID, stores obviously have to deal with different operating hours. And I was surprised to see a GameStop that didn't open until 12 noon on a Saturday.
Huh.
And I happened to walk by, and there were people standing outside, and it turns out that they were there to do various things, but including the PS5 ordering, pre-order. So I was like, oh, okay, I'm not standing on this line, you idiots. I will wait and get my PS5 when I'm good and ready.
Pretty much. So. Yeah, and there's the whole Xbox and PS5 pre-orders thing is a whole thing. I don't know why people are still doing it, but that's a whole nother subject for a whole nother podcast. Speaking of Marvel's Avengers patch addresses over 1,000 issues. Apparently, hopefully some of that is the lag and the load times, because good God. Anyway, yeah, it's been pointed out by many that Marvel's Avengers feel like 2 games put together, kinda, but still. Some fans argue that on one hand, the single-player component is great, it is, and feels satisfying in story and gameplay, it does. On the other hand, the live service aspect doesn't mesh well and feels unnecessary. I would agree on that. But what has held several players back is a series of issues with the game itself. This is what Crystal Dynamics addressed in a recent tweet post. So yeah, it would not be wrong to say that Marvel's Avengers launched with numerous issues. Not all of these issues were huge or fundamental in its design. However, they were enough for players to sit and take notice and for Crystal Dynamics to follow suit. In a recent post, Crystal Dynamics outlined 1,000 issue fix that it had rolled out on the patch for the game. It was well known that Avengers issues would need to be fixed before DLC was implemented, so this was definitely good focus for Avengers Big Patch. I haven't played the game since my, definitely before this patch, so hopefully I can go back. It'll be cool when I go back into it, which I plan on doing soon. And I know a lot of people have finished the game at this point and doing in-game stuff. Not in-game, but in-game. You know what I'm saying. Next up, Hasbro has announced Mando Mondays, which runs from October 26th all the way through December 21st and features a bevy of new merchandise from Disney Plus's Star Wars series, The Mandalorian. It's stuff that's coming from companies such as Hasbro, Lego, and Funko. If you head on over to the article over at CBR.com, it shows stuff like a Monopoly Star Wars The Mandalorian edition. There is a Star Wars The Black Series Credit Collection 6-inch heavy infantry figure. Star Wars The Black Series Credit Collection 6-inch The Mandalorian figure. There is a 6-inch Cara Dune figure. A 6-inch IG-11 figure. An Imperial Death Trooper 6-inch figure. Where is, there's a 3.75-inch
3 3/4 inch Mando figure, 3 3/4 inch Stormtrooper. There's no whatchamacallit, 3 3
Baby
quarter
Yoda?
Cardoon. What's that?
Baby Yoda?
No. What's his face? The
Darth
dude
Gideon?
no, for Christ's sake. It's the guy that
I have spoken.
yes.
Oh, Nick Nolte's character. I can't remember
Yes.
his name. Yeah, that apparently there is not a Oh yeah,
That's
look.
too bad. Probably because he died, but
Well,
spoiler alert.
yeah. Well, also, so the character that Ming Na played, Phoenix, whatever, also does not have a feature, which is a shame because we could stand to use another picture of the Mulan DeLorean.
No, no.
I had to bring that one back.
Oh.
Granted, she didn't play a Mandalorian in that one, but still, I still love that joke because I made it. So
Right.
anyway, yeah. So yeah, apparently, there's no armorer either. Now that I think about it,
Right.
but we don't necessarily know the fate of that character. We presume a thing, but we don't necessarily know. I think, or do we know? Because I don't remember. No, because we saw that character fight, but we didn't see what happened to him at the end of it. But yeah, there's a couple of Baby Yoda figures here also. So there's a bunch of figures from the Mandalorian, except with the exception of those ones. Cara Dune's getting 2 apparently, and so does the Mandalorian, but that's not really saying much.
Right.
Carl Weathers' character doesn't have a figure either. Grief.
Right.
And he's still alive. So go figure on that one. Anyway, next up. Some comic book news from Thor. Apparently Vincent D'Onofrio, yes, that one, addresses latest issues, possible adventures in babysitting ties. And this is from Thor 7, which just came out last week. The latest issue of Thor may have issued a nod to the 80s comedy Adventures in Babysitting, and Vincent D'Onofrio addressed it on Twitter. D'Onofrio responded to a tweet from writer Donny Cates, who in turn responded to a fan that asked if mechanic Adam Aziz was a reference to D'Onofrio's character in the movie. Says, that I really can't answer. However, in hindsight, it may be, although it was not intended at the time. D'Onofrio wrote, it could be no just where, it could be no just by where Thor canon has folded in. This is, I'm reading this word for word, mind you, so that sounds as crazy to you as it does to me, rightfully. But it could be no just by where Thor canon has unfolded in up until now, 2020. So basically he's saying that, nah, it's probably not. But who knows? I mean, Diana Case just said it wasn't intentional and whatever. So, but he responded to it. So, okay, sure, that's the thing. Next.
Speaking of Thor number 7, and it's played for comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Mjolnir has Tony Stark's name and number inscribed on it after Thor throws it into the middle of Broxton, and fans are encouraged to call Tony Stark, aka Iron Man. How can you call Tony Stark? Iron Man's number is 212, area code 212-970-4133. The number has a New York area code, and is a real working phone line. Callers are sent to the voicemail of Iron Man explaining how the trickery of Thor has thrown him for a loop, and advises callers to check out his website, TonyStarkIronMan.com, a landing site for Marvel.com.
Right, and apparently, I don't know if I'm assuming that's what that audio was that Dirt put in our back channel.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, but I didn't listen to it, so I was like, that's interesting. Cool. Fantastic Four number 25 adds 2 additional interior artists alongside new series artist RB Silva. So, Fantastic Four 25 has added a pair of artists to its creative roster, with Paco Medina and Will Robson coming aboard for the issue to supplement previously announced interior artist RB Silva, as announced in Marvel's weekly retailer mailer. Both Medina and Robson have drawn portions of the current Fantastic Four volume previously. The issue, which clocks in at a whopping 56 pages, Okay. Purpose, perhaps explaining the expanded art team, is billed as a game changer for the team, coming just weeks after the recent conclusion of Marvel's Empire, which put the FF at the heart of the cosmic conflict between the Kree Skrull Empire and the Kotati. So supposedly that last Empire Fantastic Four book was supposed to be the game changing one, but apparently it's this book. So we'll see when that ships, probably next week or so. Next up,
I guess that's when they're going to make an official change to, whatever it is that they're doing. Either
the dynamic, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Either officially integrate those two kids into the story,
Mm-hmm.
Because we're going to see. I'm kind of curious to see why they don't try to launch a new either Thing series, that details their family, like apart from the FF family.
Sure.
That's like a prime. That seems like a prime way to relaunch another Thing series. Not necessarily 2-in-1, but a Thing series.
Right.
We haven't seen those in a long time.
Right. So you're so you're
not
saying
since-
you're writing this book.
Listen, I would call up Slot and be like, "Hey, what do you think about co-writing this book?" Right.
Right.
But in all seriousness, I think that's what's going to happen. And obviously, it's easy when you get to an anniversary style issue number 25.
Mm-hmm.
So, right. Next up, artist Lionel Yu has announced that this week's X-Men number 12 marks his last as the ongoing series' regular interior artist. He's been the main artist for X-Men since it launched in the Dawn of X era alongside writer Jonathan Hickman. Yu plans, however, to continue as the series' cover artist. He's going to continue as the cover artist. In a tweet, he says, "Thank you for all your support and encouragement. Enjoy the issue."
Yeah. So.
We'll see who's going to be. We'll see if there is going to be a regular artist in ongoing capacity after that.
I think they said already. We might have already talked about it already, but I just don't remember who. Marvel renumbers Wolverine number 8 as Wolverine 350 in December. So Marvel's ongoing Dawn of X era Wolverine title will revert to its classic legacy numbering in December to celebrate the milestone Wolverine 350, number 350. Ongoing Wolverine creative team Ben Percy and artist Adam Kubert and Victor Bogdanovich will deliver an oversized issue for Wolverine 350. The eighth issue of the current volume that brings back some of the more mysterious aspects of the Weapon X program. So cool. That's the thing. Next up.
X fans are in for one hell of a holiday gift. Legendary X-Men writer Chris Claremont is going to return to Marvel's Merry Mutants this December with a one-shot that celebrates his long career with the X-Men. The one-shot story focuses on Claremont's co-creation Danny Moonstar of the New Mutants as she embarks on an adventure that will take her to a variety of locations and situations, depicted by numerous artists, including Brett Booth and Claremont's longtime New Mutants artist, Bill Sienkiewicz. That's cool.
Yeah. Deserved. Also, next up, Shang-Chi comic book delves into his complicated family drama ahead of the Marvel Studios film. This is basically an article with the writer Jean Luen Yang, but we get we pretty much get the interview with him and from Newsarama, and we found out apparently a little bit more about Sister Dagger in that it is a newly revealed 13-year-old little sister to Shang-Chi. So, because we talked about the new character coming within the last couple of weeks, so now we got a little bit more.
Ring.
So
anyway,
wait, what'd you say?
I said ring.
Yeah, I'm actually debating about getting a physical copy of this myself. But you can check out the article in itself and the interview there in the show notes. Next up.
All right, it's been nearly 30 years. Oh God, making us all feel old since Peter David and George Perez introduced comic readers to the Maestro, the evil future version of the Hulk first seen in Marvel's Hulk Future Imperfect. The origin of the character is currently being unveiled in David and Herman Peralta's new Maestro miniseries, and David says he has additional plans for the despotic villain in the series' aftermath. David acknowledged long term plans for the Maestro in an interview with Previews World and how the character has been on his mind for some time. I've had the general thoughts for the story rattling around in my head for decades, David said, regarding the Maestro's origin story. Okay.
So
And he has plans for the Evil Hulk beyond his new miniseries.
right. So I'm kind of wondering about something because I just remember something that happened in the issue this week, and I doubt this is going to be the case because that'd be kind of lame. But Hulk, before he gets to New York, ends up running across a bunch of insects that attack him and kind of takes him down to a point. And I kind of wonder if that's going to be the catalyst for him becoming the Maestro. Well, I mean, outside of I guess whatever else was going on in this world, but I feel like that might sound like something they would do. It's like, no, it's because of these insects that stung him a lot, so now he's starting to grow evil. I don't know. That'd be stupid if that was the case. But anyway, next up.
I was gonna say, let's hope not, but we'll see.
Yeah, agreed. Marvel Legends brings Iron Man, Black Panther, Spider-Man, and more to new Hasbro retro line. So we kind of talked about this a little bit before the show. Well, to a point anyway. Hasbro has created a true blast from the past with its new retro wave of Marvel Legends figures. The wave consists of 6 figures divided across 3 2-figure packs. Each figure stands at 3.75 inches tall and is inspired by the respective hero or villain's appearance in the 60s or 70s in Marvel canon. The figures also come on blister cards, packaging, and features premium design and detail, as well as 5 points of articulation. And they're also available for pre-order right now. So we can see as we scroll down, you can see this on the video, the packaging for this stuff. We got a Black Panther and Captain America one. You can see the box from that. And you can see the figures. There's a Cap figure. There's the Black Panther figure. I will probably be getting that one. There's the 2-pack from Iron Man and Cyclops, weirdly enough. And you can see, the Mark II classic retro version of Iron Man. And there's, of course, old Cyclops, and also Spider-Man and Electro, which you can see the box here, and the figures there. You think you're picking up any of this?
No. They don't bend at the knee or the elbow. Come on.
Yeah, I did see someone, I think I saw in the tweet about this, somebody mentioned about the articulation of it. So, which I get it.
Full size. It's the G.I. Joe size. It's the Star Wars size, the original Star Wars size, 3 3/4 inch.
Right.
So that's what's cool. But at the same time, come on.
Yeah, I guess. Like I said, I guess I get it, but it's still a novel, and I might still end up getting it.
Listen, for people who are either completists or just want to have certain things for their collection, maybe they like that style of articulation. It's not my cup of tea.
Yeah, or don't care. One or two. Next up.
IDW is going to retell the origin stories of some of Marvel's most popular superheroes again, but this time for middle grade readers as part of their Marvel Action line. Cool.
Right, so they already have a line that's kind of doing this already in comic book form. So I'm not entirely sure. Oh, I guess this is reprinting a lot of stuff they've already done, I'm assuming. Just with the origins.
You got me.
Yeah, because like I said, that Marvel Action line has already been going on, and they have a bunch of books in that line. So for that reason, but I don't know if any of them actually had the origin stories or they just hit the ground running on stuff. Who knows? But it's out there. Give these to your little ones or your big ones. I don't know. I think I'm trying to remember if I've ever even tried to read some of that stuff, but I don't think I have. So, anywho, IDW adds senior editor for kids, middle grade, and young adults. IDW Publishing has added Erica Turner as the new senior editor of original content, where she will focus on acquiring and developing original IP for kids, middle grade, and young adult readers. She comes to IDW from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt imprint Versify, where she was the most recently senior editor and was previously editorial project manager. And she says, I'm passionate about harnessing the power of literature to empower younger people, especially those from traditionally underrepresented backgrounds, she said in one, of her new role. Then there's a couple of other people they've added. One, Jeff Bruston has joined the division as Vice President for Kids, Family, and Animation. And Daniel Kendrick has joined the Entertainment Division as Director of Animation, overseeing development and production of animated series. So, cool. Congrats to IDW for that. Next up.
Gravity's Wall, actually. Graffity's Wall. Creators Ram V and Anand RK have reunited for a new original graphic novel about creativity entitled Blue and Green. Quote, ever since Anand and I finished our previous project, we'd been talking about creating a book that made use of his more painted style, V tells Newsarama. I had a story in mind that combined my love of haunting jazz and anecdotes of artistic struggle, using them as a window to look into a character's downward spiral. Much like my other projects, the ideas just all seem to fit. Blue and Green centers on Eric Dieter, a musician dealing with a creative downturn in his life while also wrestling with the death of his mother. Okay.
Yeah, cool. That sounds interesting. Last but not least, new Archie comic books to release day and date on Comixology, which I believe that started this week. Fans of Archie Comics may already be celebrating the 80th anniversary of the Riverdale Gang, but the comic publisher has saved some of its most exciting news until now. Thanks to a newly expanded relationship with Comixology, the leader in all things digital comics, Archie and Friends will be coming to readers of both physical and digital issues side by side on release date. And apparently, yes, like I said, that release date is this week's, starting with this week's run. New Archie Comics titles will release day and date on Comixology Unlimited, marking the first time a major U.S. comic publisher provides both physical and digital prints of an issue on the same date of publication to subscribers of the digital service. So, cool. If you like Archie Comics, there you go. And that, folks, is the end of the news section. We've got one more ad read before we head out.
Our last ad read of the night is for Wink, the personalized wine club. Wink is a world of wine delivered right to your door. From rosé to cabernet to torronté, Wink has over 100 styles of wine to discover. Ever try an orange wine? Wink connects you to a world of exclusive wines tailored to your taste and delivered directly to your door. Wink delivers 4 bottles of wine to you every month with free shipping. You can pick your own bottles or let Wink choose and match to your taste. It doesn't cost a thing to become a member, and you can skip or cancel anytime. And now the listeners of the Comic Book Chronicles can enjoy an exclusive discount of $20 off your first order. To place your first order with $20 off and to help keep our show free for you, go to our network website at cspn.us/wink. That's cspn.us/WINC. Wink wines through CSPN. Do it today.
And as we come to a close of another episode of Comic Book Chronicles, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for coming out. We appreciate you much. I have been Roddykat. You can find me at Roddykat on Twitter. You can also find me at News Nerds Need on Twitter. You can also find me on CBCaps on Instagram. Agent_70 on Twitter and Instagram. Maybe we can get him streaming some video games when he gets one. that was the response I probably expected. PCN_dirt on Twitter, PopCultureNet on Twitter, PopCultureNetwork.com, and all his umbrella sites therein. And also, I guess he's still doing this, but Byte, the Vine replacement, if that even still around, actually, where he's doing comic reviews over on Comic Reviews, no vowels. The Osiris that is ish. Tim DOGG98 on Twitter. The Click Nation on Twitter. CB Cron on Twitter, which is the Comic Book Chronicles account. You go check that out. Send a message there. We'll see it. Questions there also if you want to. Hashtag Comic Book Chronicles also. Check that out. But also, you can see Tim over at Comic Book Resources, where he's writing his face off. You can find this here program on the Coast of the Podcast Network, that's cspn.us.
Do it today.
You can also find us on your podcast personal place of choice, whether it be Google Play, Apple iTunes, Spotify, or the Cold Slither Podcast Network's SoundCloud page. But you can also find us, recording this very program, if you're not watching right now, at the time of this recording, on YouTube at the Click Nation's YouTube channel. But you can also see us streaming on Twitch, twitch.tv/Comic Book Chronicles, and that is every Thursday night, 9:30-ish p.m. Eastern Standard Time on those places. And of course, the audio version of this program comes out sometimes during the weekend, probably by Saturday on on the CSPN.us, and you should check that out if you're not catching the live version. And with that, folks, we will be back next week with another episode of the Comic Book Chronicles. Peace.
Peace. One.
Wakanda forever!